If your team got guaranteed money, tell them call me.
Whoop. Make me say, my.
I done been around the world. Yeah, I was made for this.
Player Performance with J.A. Cavalier.
Welcome to NBA Player Performance on this Monday, November the 4th, 2024. We got a great show for you guys today. 15 games on the card, the entire league playing. We are honed in on 6 of those games with the top officials. I'm your guest host, The Shark, featuring Junior Brown, Luke Shuey, and of course, Coach Rick. J.A. Cavalier will be back on Wednesday for all the fire, hype, and analysis. Before we get into the show, head on over to ylose.com, YLOSE.com for all packages and VIP plays. Be sure to drop a like on the video and comments below. I will interact with you guys. Thumbs up. Now, let's get into the show and let's dominate. Lakers at Pistons, 7:30 in Detroit. The first game of this gigantic slate to open the month on Monday, November 4th. We're here with Luke, the prop master. He's looking at Purdue's finest, Jaden Ivey, to score the ball at will tonight. It correlates with my play. Luke, talk to me on Jaden Ivey over points, 16.5.
Yeah, I love this third man, his third season in the NBA, I should say. I love him to have a big night tonight. And we were just talking off the air. There's a game tipping every 15 minutes tonight. We can't figure out why, but who's going to complain about nonstop basketball all night? We started with Jaden Ivey over 16.5 points. If you look at his first 2 seasons, he's averaging about this number. He's averaged about 16 points, but this year he's amped it up a little bit. He's at 18.7 per game, and I think his line dropped back to where it was last season because he just had poor performances of 10 and 15 points, so he went under his last 2 games. I see him going over, and my key stat here is his opportunity share. So he's getting up 16 shots per game. I mean, that's a lot of shots. If you can average just a point a shot to cover this line, most NBA players can get there in terms of efficiency. I really like him to go over here. And then you also look at what the Lakers want to do. They're going to try and force the ball out of Cade Cunningham's hands pretty much at all costs. Jaden's going to have to run the offense, make the flow his, and I think he's got a lot of shot attempts coming tonight. I'm going over.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. And my official play on this game, Detroit plus 7.5, obviously is dependent on these principal players scoring the ball. And speaking of that play, it's just a continued buy on Detroit here. Detroit 2-5 straight up, but more importantly, 4-2-1 ATS. And for those of you guys who have been following us on NBA Player Performance here, I bet them almost every single game. And it's not because I'm a fan or I have bias. They're just a great buy low team with first-year head coach JB Bickerstaff, this young core of players, and some veteran roster pieces that are really facilitating growth within this group. And if you go through their calendar, as we mentioned, I believe on Friday, they've actually had a gauntlet of a schedule to begin the season, playing mostly Eastern Conference playoff teams, and they've competed incredibly well against the number. Coming off an outright win yesterday in Brooklyn, New York, had to take the subway to the game due to the marathon in New York. Some interesting pictures have surfaced on the internet on that, but nonetheless, they come back home in a back-to-back. So I said to myself, is this a bad spot? Well, their only other back-to-back this year, they did catch Boston at home, a brutal spot theoretically, and they played Boston really tight. 124-118 loss, covered on a plus 13.5. And you look at the Lakers here. The Lakers are exhibiting polarization early season. 3-0 ATS at home against 3 Western teams. 0-3 ATS on the road. 0-2 ATS road east. Very lackluster stuff, getting hammered at Cleveland. Came out scorching hot on Friday night in Toronto and then just stopped playing. They do cap this trip final game on Wednesday at Memphis. I think it's a look ahead. It's a dead zone spot. They're off tomorrow for Election Day. And final point on this. You guys know we love to buy these clustered revenge games. This is 7x revenge game for Detroit. Lakers 7-0 last 7. Last year won 2 margin games at minus 8.5 and minus 11.5. This opened at minus 5.5. It's very short, and I believe this will be a game played inside of 2 points either side of the money line. 2 officials in one game. Luke, the prop master, over Ivy, 16.5 points. And for myself, Detroit plus 7.5. Let's cash these tickets. Knicks at Rockets, out of conference ball on this Monday. an interesting tip time, 8:45 p.m. Eastern time, as the NBA is staggering all these games across a 3.5-hour window. No games tonight tipping at the same time. Very interesting stuff. We're interested. We got two officials in this game. Junior's with us. Coach is with us on this Monday. Go to Junior first. Couple unders in this matchup last year between these teams. You like the over, a nice buy low. What's going on here?
Yeah, I think this number is just a little bit too low. When I saw it, I had this number capped at 226. So when I saw that it was at 217, it actually opened up at 219, and it's been steamed down. Now I do understand why it's going that way. These teams are two of the slowest paced teams in the league. I just think personally, just from having watched the last couple of games with these guys, the style of play is going to lend itself to a faster-paced game. Last year when Şengün got injured, I think the Rockets discovered a different set of lineups that actually work for them because, it's one of those statistical anomalies where that the Rockets are not better without Şengün, but when he got hurt, they played better. So I think they have different identities. You've seen him sit parts of crunch time, not because he's not good, but because Ime Udoka is a very good coach who adapts to the pace of the games. I think in this game at home, he's going to try and speed up the pace because in the half court versus half court, the Knicks have the advantage there with Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson kind of finding their groove. I think, in the first couple of games, Towns was averaging like 8-9 shots a game. Now Thibodeau's got him involved in the offense. It's starting to pick up. Their defense has picked up a bit, but I think that's a little bit misleading with the sample size we have. I say all of that to say my play is essentially on the number being just a tad too low. I think both teams get over 110 here and clear the over first in this spot.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. As I mentioned, last year these teams did play twice, both far below this number. So books certainly like more points tonight. And I think it's what you said. The Knicks seem to be getting into a pretty good flow here with Karl Anthony Towns. He dropped 44 a couple nights ago. The supposed growing pains that we saw in the opener against Boston have really not sustained. And Coach has picked up on that. Coach, looking at Knicks for the game side here officially at -2.
Yeah, I saw this last night. It was -4. Then it went to 3.5. Now it's at 2. We could talk for an hour as to why that is. But I just simply like it. The Knicks are starting to come together. They're starting to gel. 2 straight wins. They got 2 just stud performances from their best players. Towns had 44 against Miami. Brunson comes back, has 36 against Detroit. 2 pretty good defensive efforts as well. And you look at Houston, Junior mentioned, they kind of try some different lineups here and there. I call them consistently inconsistent. They beat Dallas last Thursday night on the road in Dallas, and they come back home and they're down by up by 23 against Golden State. Then they go on and lose that game. So I think the Knicks kind of have their number. If you look historically in the matchup, 8-2 straight up, 8-2 against the spread in the last 10 against the Rockets. New York has won and covered 3 of its last 4 games. The Rockets in their last 4 haven't shot over 41%. Maybe they shoot a little bit better tonight, but I still think the Knicks have it, and they take the win and the cover here.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'm wearing the hat for good reason. The buy hat is engaged on this Monday. Coach said it, and I was going through the Knicks schedule last night. 3-2 straight up, 3-2 ATS. So key point there, when they win the game, they do cover the spread. And I think that is very important for this conversation. And when you really start to go through their non-covers, in the opener at Boston hit 29 threes, which I believe is an NBA record for a game. So it's not so much that the Knicks were terrible. When Boston's setting historical shooting records, nobody in the world is going to come close to beating them. 2 nights later, they did lose at home to Cleveland, which at that point in time, we thought, okay, Cleveland's representative, Kenny Atkinson making the group better. Well, zoom out to now, Cleveland is 7-0 straight up. So how much better does that make the Knicks look when the Knicks were up 13 in that game in the second half and Cleveland came back? So both Knicks losses have been against really elite level of competition this year. And as Coach mentioned, Houston really is very consistent in the early going this year. And they are actually 0-1 ATS and straight up at home against the Eastern Conference in their only matchup of the year. It was the opener on October 23rd against Charlotte. Laying 8.5 points to Charlotte, lost outright 110-105. And Coach mentioned that the Knicks have dominated this matchup over the last 10. I think an interesting point here is Houston actually did win the last time these teams played back on February 12th last season at home in Houston, 105-103. But the books seem to have a good grip on this line because they actually did have Houston favored in that game at -1.5, which at that point would have been a very contrarian buy on Houston with the Knicks having dominated the previous window of time. Well, after Houston won that game, now books are moving it back to the Knicks at open, -4. Market steam coming on it. We suspect there's just a lot of syndicate action on some of these games that are buying numbers for perceived value without looking at the deep analysis that we're putting on record here on NBA player performance. Based on that numerical weighting, I have the Knicks to win this game by 8 points on the average. Jalen Brunson is balling. He's an absolute dog. This team has great mental makeup. This will be a good game at 8:45 in Houston, but we do love the Knicks at -2 official and Junior on the over at 217.5. 2 officials, 1 game. Let's dominate. Grizzlies at Nets, 8 o'clock in Brooklyn. A rematch of a game played last week. A Brooklyn outright win. Brooklyn took a loss yesterday at home. They're looking to bounce back. Junior's with us with a sharp contrarian take on the home team. Junior official +5.
Yeah, so obviously, like Shark said, this is probably a contrarian take because Brooklyn just lost outright last night to the Pistons. So why would I be on Brooklyn? And it actually has a lot more to do with I don't see a reason why I would be laying 4 points with Memphis on the road. And maybe I'm biased because I watched that game in full. And I saw that Brooklyn was able to be very efficient offensively. And Memphis, as this season, even though, it's still very early, as this season has progressed into now we're getting close to a 10-game sample size, which is really, enough to at least start to understand what these teams are. They're not a great defensive team. I know that they were at one point, on their trajectory from a young team to a playoff team until, the whole John Morant saga plus injuries derailed their progression. But if you really just look at their games, they've also been playing teams who offensively are pretty tragic. Like the Jazz are the worst offense in the league right now. Houston's okay. The Magic are one of the worst offenses in the league. The Bucks struggle, and the 76ers, as presently composed, are one of the worst offenses in the league. So even with those poor offenses that they're playing, they're still somewhere in middle of the pack defensively. And I just think that Brooklyn at home, they're not the Knicks in terms of their market share in New York, but Shark, that Brooklyn building does have its own certain type of energy. People will be in the building to see John Morant playing, but they will get excited for the Nets. I think it's going to be actually a pretty cool atmosphere. And what I saw in the first game was the Nets have no reason to fear this Memphis team. Not to say that Memphis has any reason to fear the Nets. I just think that as a capper, I look at this number and think to myself, anything over 3 for Memphis is just too much. And I'm going to go ahead and take this young Brooklyn team, to bounce back under a new, young, intense coach who will have them playing and putting in a better effort tonight as compared to what you saw last night.
I think that's a great point. We talked about this last week with this coach, Jordi Fernandez, a head coach for the national team with Canada, and really just a grinder type of coach. We'll have them really live tonight off really an abysmal effort yesterday in the afternoon on Sunday, taking a 14-point loss late to Detroit. And I was looking at it myself, and originally I thought Memphis would go in for revenge because Memphis did lose to them earlier this year, 119-106. But if you look at this back-to-back scenario, which again is supposed to be a fatigue spot, the last time these teams played, it was actually a back-to-back second leg for Brooklyn. And Brooklyn had gone to overtime the previous night against Denver and lost 144-139. So you talk about putting a lot of energy on record night one. They traveled to Memphis and they beat them handily by 13 points. So why couldn't they do it again? And really, another point on this potential fatigue and this calendar structure. After tonight's game, Brooklyn does not play until Friday. So they have 3 full days off after this. And this coach, Jordi Fernandez, I could almost 100% guarantee you, is telling them that. You have all week off. You played horribly yesterday. Leave it out here tonight. And one final point on this. This whole back-to-back fatigue thing in the NBA, I think, is very, very overspoken. When we really center on this, these are professional athletes under the age of 28 mostly. These guys are very capable of running 2 nights in a row, 30 to 35 minutes. So this load management thing and this idea that you have to automatically fade a team on a back-to-back, it's not very realistic in terms of the athleticism and the endurance level of these guys. And that's why the line is actually short. Memphis laid 11.5 points at home, only 5 at open here. It's a short number. And what books are telling you here is they expect Memphis to win the game outright by 1 point. So Junior's on +5. It's a very sharp look. Certainly contrarian, 8 o'clock in Brooklyn. Junior on +5. Let's cash this ticket. Pacers at Mavericks, 9:45 Eastern. Probably the first game in NBA history to tip off at 9:45 on this staggered scheduling on Monday, November 4th. But we're here with Coach Rick. We're here with Luke. We got a couple officials in this game. Just talking about this game off the air. A lot of inconsistencies with these teams, very specific to Indiana. Coach is trying to figure it out. Likes the home team, Dallas, at -4.5.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's a tricky one, but I like Dallas -4.5. Nesmith and Nembhard are both out. When those two are off the floor for Indiana, they're bad enough defensively, but with those two off the floor, they're giving up almost 124 points per 100 possessions. I think at times tonight they're going to have to go small, which that's going to be a huge issue. I don't know how you're going to keep Luka from scoring in the paint when you go small. They're such a mash unit. I mean, who are they going to throw out on the floor against these guys? Then you look at Dallas and you think, well, they played yesterday. Going to be some fatigue, but they blew out the Magic, and all their starters sat in the fourth quarter. So Dallas, I like them -4.5. I wouldn't mind, taking a look at their team total as well. It's set at 120.5, and I know they've only hit 120 twice this season. But Indy's defense, I mean, with those two guys out, that might be a play as well. But officially, I like Dallas -4.5.
Yeah, just one comment on that. The last time these teams played, March 5th last season, Dallas actually scored exactly 120 points. So just to give you a snapshot to how tight that might be, Dallas will score the ball under yesterday against Orlando. This will be stylistically very polarized to the other direction. But going to Luke here now, second-year product out of Duke, 7-1, Derek Lively II, rebounds prop. A lot of intrigue here. Luke, you're all over it, under 8.5. Talk to me.
Yeah, when you look at a center position, you always think, tons of rebounds, and his line 8.5 could be tempting to take the over. But the Mavs centers don't play as big of a rebounding role as you might think. Lively comes off the bench for starters, so he's not with the starting group. He plays more than Gafford probably does on a nightly basis, but he's only at 23 minutes a game, which is what he was at last year. And last year he only put up 6.9 rebounds per game. I mean, this number's at 8.5 because he's at 8.9 rebounds so far this year, 8.2. But I just don't see it happening. It's not a great matchup for him, particularly when you look up him matching up with Miles Turner. He's going to be on the perimeter a lot. Turner loves to shoot threes, kind of run around the court more than most big guys. And Luka snags a ton of rebounds. He's actually their leading rebounder for Dallas so far this year. I think that the under is the sharp play here. And then the last piece of information, when you look at the advanced analytics, his rebound rate is actually the exact same as last year. So despite his literal rebounding raw numbers being up, his rebounding rate and opportunity potential is the exact same. I think that number trends downward from 8.2 towards his 6.97. I'm going to try and take advantage of that tonight. Hope you guys tail me. I'm going under 8.5.
Yeah, great analysis there. And, just on this game, something we were saying, but Indiana is going to be one of those difficult teams to handicap in the early going this season. Went deep in the playoffs last year, farther than people thought. And I think they're having trouble focusing early season here, having some really poor efforts. I think notably their previous game getting beat by a poor version of the Pelicans over the weekend, not showing the ability to bounce back off of poor efforts either. I think probably a little distracted. We said Tyrese Halliburton's being filmed for the Netflix show. He's talking to 50 Cent and who knows who else, probably Floyd Mayweather and I don't know, all these different celebrities. But he's a young kid. He's from Iowa State. The limelight is on him. I think coach is probably on the right side here at 4.5. And, of course, Luke, the prop master, under 8.5. Derek Lively rebounds. 2 officials in this game. Let's dominate. Sixers at Suns. More out-of-conference basketball on this massive Monday slate. We're here with Luke. We're here with Junior. Junior looking at the Suns at -7.
Yeah, Shark, you know me well enough to know anytime I'm laying this many points, it's really that I'm fading the other team. In this case, the 76ers, who 40 of their shots come from 2 guys, Kelly Oubre and the young boy. And you don't mind, obviously, Maxey getting 25 shots a game in a situation where he has to carry the offense. But when Kelly Oubre is your second leading shot taker at almost 20 a game, the ceiling of your offense is pretty low. There's no starter right now for the Sixers shooting over 43%, other than Kyle Lowry, who only takes like 4 shots a game. So you kind of get the picture there where the Sixers just cannot put the ball in the basket. And Shark knows very well my obsession with teams that have no point guard. And I think that Tyus Jones has completely changed the makeup of the Suns. Now Devin Booker can do what he does best, is play off the ball and not have to be a combo guard, which is what he's been doing for the last couple of years. And I think that the best point I can prove to that fact is Tyus Jones' assist-to-turnover ratio now is like 7-1. The last time Memphis was good, was when he was their backup point guard, and he would come on and sometimes play minutes along John Morant. So with Tyus Jones there, plus their improved defense, which is giving up 1.09 points per possession, which is way, way improved from last season. I think the combination of their offense plus their improved defense combined with the 76ers roster issues leads me to laying this many points with the Suns at home.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with this. We're going to Luke here for yet another prop. The sharp analysis will ensue. Luke, looking at Caleb Martin, one of 2 twins, 7th year from Nevada, over 9.5 points.
Yeah, not a huge public play here. Not a lot of people are probably looking at Caleb Martin, and it's a lean. It's not one of my main plays today, but I like him to go over. You could take his PRA line. I'm actually looking at his point total, 9.5. Again, is Paul George going to play or not? We don't know. I really don't care because Martin, he's been their 3rd leading scorer behind Maxey and Oubre, like Junior pointed out. He's been having to take more shots than he should in this offense. But the opportunity is there. He has to do it. He's going to have the ball. He's getting up over 10 shot attempts per game. So it's one of those situations. If he gets 1 point per shot attempt, that should not be hard for a guy that can get to the free throw line. He's getting the free throw line almost 6 times a game. Heck, that's 6 points right there, sitting right there. He could knock down a couple threes. I just think he has so many ways to get to double digits tonight, despite whether Paul George plays or not. That I have nothing but the over here. So I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it's a niche play. Caleb Martin over 9.5.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. You're more versed on that than I do believe Paul George is playing tonight, which, again, I'm not entirely sure the dynamic, but I do think large scale here, when you see a big-time player like Paul George joining a team for his first run with this group, I don't think it usually plays particularly well. There's a lack of group chemistry. Tyrese Maxey has been really dominating the ball. How are they going to balance the basketball with this group? And I think it gives more credential to Junior's take, and I think that's why you're getting a lot of market steam on the Suns tonight. I think people are attaching to that idea. This is going to take some time to integrate these players. And one final point to really give a little more credential to Junior's play. These teams did play twice last year. Home team was 2-0 ATS, average win margin by 12.5 points per game. So Junior officially on the Suns at -7. Luke, Caleb Martin over 9.5 points. 2 officials in this one as well. Let's dominate. Spurs at Clippers, 10:30 in Inglewood, California. The final game on tonight's card, 15 games, and we are honing in on the last one. Junior's with us for some commentary. I have an official take. Junior, we love the Spurs in the early going this season. Popovich is actually not going to be coaching the team tonight. Didn't seem to hurt them in the last game. Wemby season 2, CP3, Harrison Barnes. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I got an actually interesting take there. So, in season 1, there seemed to be like a little bit of a power struggle between Wemby and Pop in the sense that, the minutes restrictions, he was getting kind of frustrated. I think with Pop, not present, I think Wemby has the potential to kind of go off here. I criticized him pretty heavily the last time on the show saying, you're not Kevin Durant. I just think he just plays the way he plays. And I think that eventually he will become a better player than he is and be more efficient from the mid-range where he's I'm not even saying in my opinion, just go look at the stats. He's a below-average shooter from 3. He's a below-average shooter from mid-range. He shoots almost 90% from the free throw line, where I feel like that's like one of those indicators where if you can make free throws at a very high clip, your jump shot will just figure itself out. So I say all of that to say, I think Wemby has a lot of value. I think the Spurs have a lot of value. They're coming off a massive win against a Minnesota team that is for real, and they bounced back in a way that shows that this team does have some heart, some belief, and is trending in the right direction. Now, I don't want to overstate what I'm saying. They're not going to go out and win 40 games or anything, but for them to be 500 through 6 games is an improvement on what we saw last year, and I think that Shark is on the right side of this, but I'll kick it over to you to let the people know what's popping.
Absolutely. As I said, 10:30 here, taking the Spurs at +4 officially now. This is getting steamed towards the Spurs. I think that's significant sharp movement there. And, as Junior said, 3-3 straight up. I think even more importantly, 4-2 ATS, the Spurs team in the early going here. And it really is. It's Wemby. And the whole free throw comment, that speaks to discipline and focus. How many players probably should shoot 90%? They just don't practice. And they don't really hone in on the fundamentals. And this Wemby guy from France is absolutely a high-level intellectual NBA basketball player. And then you add CP3, who is so well known for being basically a player coach at this point in his career, so good tactically on the court in all different facets. And, of course, Harrison Barnes. This team is performing great. The Clippers are not performing great at all. Kawhi Leonard, we don't know what's going on with him. We just mentioned Paul George making his debut tonight with the Sixers. This is pretty much James Harden and a bunch of role players, and they're really not bringing a ton of focus to the early season. 2-4 straight up and ATS, 1-3 ATS at home. This new arena and all these gadgets and things doesn't seem to be helping the team at all. And we said this about the Detroit game against the Lakers tonight, a 7x revenge game. This is a 7x revenge game for the Spurs. Clippers have dominated this matchup in recent history. And I think it's tightening up. You go to last year, first matchup, only one played in LA last year. Clippers won by 40. So just to give you guys a snapshot of how short this line is at 3.5, Clippers beat them by 40 about a year ago in this stadium, minus 9.5. Book's moving it way down. And the most recent matchup played in San Antonio last November, a cover by the Spurs. Spurs cover. It's even shorter now. I think the Spurs probably get an outright victory tonight. Junior with some comments, myself an official, to close this card on Monday, November 4th. Take the Spurs at +4, and let's cash this ticket.
Tell me what you gonna do now. Keep rolling.
Thank you guys for watching NBA player performance on this Monday, November 4th. 2024. A great conversation it was. 15 games on the card, 6 games in detail. Make sure you guys get on over to ylose.com, YLOSE.com for free picks, stats, trends, scores, and more. For Luke Shuey, Junior Brown, Coach Rick, and of course, J.A. Cavalier, who will return on Wednesday, I'm your guest host, The Shark. Remember, yesterday is a memory. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. Be in the moment, bet with the Sharps, and let's dominate.
Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort. Suffocation, no breathing, don't give a fuck.